Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews. Today we're going to look at a Terra Battat figure, one that I probably should have gotten to a long time ago, but I just have not, and it is the Carnotaurus, my all-time favorite dinosaur, so I will, of course, look at a Carnotaurus any day of the week, and this Carnotaurus is just awesome. It really is. These smaller Terra Battat figures are just beyond words beautiful. I have been in love with them since I first saw them. They are definitely really highly detailed and beautifully painted figures. I know Terra Battat went the route of those ugly large plastic figures that they now are releasing, but we collectors can always keep our fingers crossed and hope that one day they go back to these beautiful figures that they were releasing previously. They did release this Carnotaurus in a larger plastic version, which I have reviewed previously, and I was not impressed with. So let's get a look at the actual smaller original. Well, I guess it's not really an original, there was a previous paint scheme, but it's the original Sculpt. It's that same Sculpt, just a repaint, and I don't actually own the original, so the only way to look at it is to look at this newer version that is still currently available at Target. So let's go ahead and break it out of the box. Now, one thing that I really like about Terra Battat is that they take a very similar approach to the appearance and the overall look of their figures and the entire packaging that's similar to PNSO, where they show a background that is the habitat of the dinosaur, and you can see that that is very cool. And they do this with each of these smaller figures like this, and you can also use this for a great way to display your figure, as you can then set your Carnotaurus back in there and display it on your shelf if that's how you would like to do it. And I think it's super cool that they do include that. You can also turn it around and then look on the back to read all about the Carnotaurus, the dinosaur, whatever kind of dinosaur that you do buy, and it's got tons of information there if you are in fact interested. And then of course it down there in the corner has the signature of Dan LaRusso, as this is part of the Dan LaRusso collection. So here is the Carnotaurus itself. Out of the package, you can see just looks really nice. A very cool paint scheme that they've got on it here. Again, Carnotaurus is always for some reason associated with red, and it's nice to see a much darker, a little bit more evil looking version of Carnotaurus, but yet at the same time you have that red throat, so they did include a little bit of that classic red color that everybody loves to make their Carnotaurus. Let's get a closer look and see just how nice up close it is. So starting up here at the head sculpt, you can see that the overall head sculpt is really quite nice. There is a ton of sculpt and detail put into the head sculpt of this. You see the horn up there is very nicely sculpted, and the eye looks pretty good as well. It, for some reason, is honestly sticking out a little bit, like from the head. I think they may have just applied a little too much paint to this eye, but I'm not really positive. But it still looks pretty good. It's got a very nice gloss to make it look like a real living eye. You see the nostrils are sculpted out very nicely up there in the front. The teeth are also sculpted pretty nicely, and they're all individually sculpted and painted pretty well. There's a little bit of sloppiness, but no major sloppiness. You can also see that the inside of the mouth is a fairly realistic coloration. I will say that from the front, the sculpt definitely looks a little weird. I'm not really sure why. The mouth looks just super strange. It's a little crooked, I think. But at the same time, from the side, it still looks really nice. Pretty darn nice sculpting, as far as I would say. You've got some very nice osteoderms on the lower jaw here, and then we come up into the side of the neck. Lots of skin wrinkling and beautiful skin folds as you run down the length of the neck, and of course those trademark Carnotaurus bumps start to appear as you run down here into the very short Carnotaurus arms. They look pretty good, a little jumbled as far as the claws and detail goes. I'm not super big fan of the hand area of this figure, but overall it's still a pretty appealing Carnotaurus. Very nice creases of the skin as we run down the neck. Again, we get to the stomach. Pretty nicely sculpted out skin detail. You see some skin being pulled away from the body here as this left rear leg is in a back position as it's taking a step forward with the right leg. Again, those Carnotaurus bumps continue along the whole body. We get to this rear leg. You can see the hip bone is very nicely elaborated up here, and those skin creases and skin detail continues as we run down the leg. Very nice kneecaps, very muscular looking calf, really elaborated muscle tone. And we get down here into the foot, and the foot is pretty nicely sculpted, and those nails are also very nicely sculpted. They look pretty good as well. And then we come up here into the tail. And again, those trademark Carnotaurus bumps run the entire length of the tail and all the way out. Very nice long curved tail. And then we look at it from the opposing side. Again, that very nice detail in the neck. You can see some skin folds here in the neck as the skin is being scrunched up. The Carnotaurus is looking to his right. So very nice attention to detail on the part of Battat. And then coming down, you get those Carnotaurus arms again. Once again, I'm not really sold on the arms. I think the hands look very strange. I don't know if it's just because it kind of appears to have some extra like rubber hanging off a little bit or what, but they just look a little strange to me. But there's some very nice detail right here in the shoulder area. You can see the shoulder blade protruding from the skin, pretty nicely elaborated. And there's definitely some very nice creases of the skin there in that area. When we get to the stomach detail, again, very nicely sculpted out skin detail there. You can see the hip bone here elaborated. We come down, very nice skin detail in the thigh area. You can also see the musculature there, nicely sculpted out. Again, that calf muscle, and then we come down into the foot. Once again, the foot looks very nice. You can see the nails are painted pretty nicely. Overall has a very bird-like appearance. You can see the dew claw back there as well. And then we come up into the tail. Once again, looks very, very cool. Very nicely sculpted and very long, nicely curved. And the overall paint applied looks really natural to me. It looks very real. You can see all sorts of airbrushing of a darker gray and lighter grays, and then this very light gray, and then of course the red in the neck. So it's a very dark appearance to Carnotaurus, but the paint applied is very natural. There's all sorts of different tones of color, and overall, it just makes for a very realistic paint job as far as the Carnotaurus goes. One thing that I do have an issue with sometimes from time to time when it comes to these Terra Battat figures is that they tend to get warped legs and they start to bend a little bit, and that's definitely a downside sometimes, but I haven't had that issue with this Carnotaurus. I actually have two of these Carnotauruses, and actually maybe even three, I'm not sure. So they don't really have any type of a warping with the legs, but my Tyrannosaurus has, so there is always the potential for that. I kind of wish that Battat would maybe include some of the plastic that goes on the underside of certain figures to prevent the legs from warping, but they don't. You could always just leave your dinosaur in the package and it's strapped down so it won't fall then, but a lot of people are like me and like to get it out and really take a nice look at it, so unfortunately they do sometimes warp in the legs a little bit, but I think the hot water cold water trick could work to just straighten them out. As far as a size on the Carnotaurus, from the tail to the head, you are looking at about 6 3/4 inches or about 17 centimeters, and for a height you're looking at somewhere in the about 3 1/4 inch range or about 8.5 centimeters. For a size comparison, there is Mr. Papo T-Rex, who you can see is significantly larger than the Carnotaurus. The Carnotaurus is definitely a smaller figure, but these Terra Battat figures kind of have two different ranges. You've got the smaller ones like this, and then the slightly larger one like the Acrocanthosaurus and Tyrannosaurus Rex. So this one definitely falls into the smaller figure range, but again, it's not a bad sized Carnotaurus, and it's filled with lots and lots of beautiful detail and sculpt for something that is the size that it is. So without question, I am a huge fan of these Terra Battat figures. I really love them, all of the ones that were released, and they were starting to re-release them, as you can see here with this Carnotaurus, as the original paint scheme looked much different than this, and those ones I believe were all discontinued years ago, the original line. Then they re-released a whole bunch of them, and they continued to release new ones, and then Dan LaRusso passed away, and then it just kind of went to a dead stop until they started with those new, large, ugly plastic ones. So I'm going to keep my fingers crossed that eventually Terra Battat returns to these figures, because there were quite a few more that were definitely fan favorites as far as these Battat figures that people were really looking forward to coming out, like the Diplodocus. And I know there were some sculpts that were new sculpts they were working on, so I'm hoping that at some point Terra Battat kind of gets their game and their thoughts together and gets back on a roll with these figures and really gets them going, because these could be great sellers and definitely something I could see them making a significant amount of money with if they would return back to these figures and release the others in the line. However, this Carnotaurus itself is really, really nice. It's got a few issues that I'm not super sold on, like the hands and the mouth area looks a little weird just because it's kind of crooked, but overall it is a very appealing Carnotaurus. I'm definitely a big fan of the paint. I think the paint job looks fantastic, really. It's very natural, very real looking, looks like skin color, not paint, and it's done beautifully by airbrushing, and overall there's no real sloppiness anywhere with the paint, So it's definitely a very nice presentation of the Carnotaurus. Of course, you get the awesome box with the artwork that you can go ahead and put him inside with and display him in, and then you have the information on the back. So this is definitely a very good deal for a beautiful Carnotaurus figure. I don't think these things are too much. They're probably like $7-8 I think at Target, something like that. So they're pretty cheap and very nicely done figures. If you would like to buy one, I will throw a link in the description. If I can in fact find this on Target, which I do believe it is on their website. So if you want to buy it, go ahead and click that link in the description. Go purchase this very nice looking Carnotaurus. And please like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.